You may have noticed in the news recently that starting on March 17th, 2024, those using other transit agencies to get to or from Toronto will no longer need to pay a separate TTC fare to ride the TTC. The province of Ontario's One Fare program will begin to subsidize the TTC fare portion of combined GO and TTC trips, and the second fare for any cross-boundary trips not involving GO. For example, if you start a trip on York Region Transit just north of Toronto, you will no longer have to pay a second separate TTC fare if you subsequently take the TTC in Toronto, as is currently the case. The opposite is also true. If you start a TTC trip in Toronto and then take York Region Transit, your York Region Transit fare will now be completely covered as well. This is great news for transit commuters in the Greater Toronto Area frequently crossing the city boundaries. The One Fare program, however, does not hide the fact that the current system of fares in the Greater Toronto Area is more complicated and, dare I say, unfair than it really has to be. If anything, it's demonstrating the opposite. The name One Fare is misleading, as there are still technically separate fares for separate systems, with one fare being subsidized by the province. But I digress. I'm not here to argue against the existence of the One Fare program. I actually support it, as I believe it's a step in the right direction for transit across the region. Instead, I'm going to argue why the current system of fares should be overhauled from its very core, beyond what is currently proposed under the One Fare program, sort of like what the Montreal metro area has done in recent times. In this three-part series, I'll go over some of the quirks of the Greater Toronto Area's transit fares that will hopefully convince you why such an overhaul is necessary. For simplicity, this video will focus on the major public transit operators that accept the PRESTO card and Milton Transit for good measure. There are also private bus operators, Megabus, Flixbus, OnXBus, just to name a few, that may be used to travel in the GTA, but I'm not going to delve into those in this series. I'm also going to exclude the Union Pearson Express train, a train service linking Pearson Airport with Toronto's Union Station, but also used by commuters along its corridor. There are many different transit operators in the Greater Toronto Area, with most of them serving their respective city or region. There's the Toronto Transit Commission, or TTC, serving the City of Toronto, Durham Region Transit, or DRT, York Region Transit, or YRT, Brampton Transit, MyWay, Milton Transit, Oakville Transit, Burlington Transit, and Hamilton Street Railway, or HSR. A misleading name to say the least, as they have not operated a street railway in many years. From here on, I will refer to these 9 systems as the local systems, even though they can be used for trips across city boundaries. And last but not least, GO Transit, the regional rail and bus system serving the entire GTA. Let's look at each system's fares side by side. The assumption for these is one single trip paid for with a PRESTO stored value card, as this represents the majority of non-monthly pass trips taken on pretty much all of these local systems. The fares are almost always higher on all of these systems if you pay directly by cash or a contactless debit or credit card. Every single local transit agency in the GTA operates on a flat fare system. You pay the same fare regardless of the distance traveled, whether you travel 1 stop or 100 stops. Specifically, you only tap to pay at the beginning of the ride, and from there on, you have a 2-hour window of unlimited travel for that transit agency, with one exception that I'll get to in another video. If you have a weekly or monthly pass with a particular transit agency, then you have unlimited rides on that transit agency for that amount of time. GO Transit, on the other hand, operates on a zone-based system based on the origin and destination for each segment, meaning that you must tap in and out. This is not required on any local system. I've listed the minimum GO Transit fares. That is, the fare that you pay if you travel on GO Transit within one zone. For now, I'll leave GO Transit aside and consider trips that only use local transit agencies. Most, if not all of these transit agencies, in fact, operate one or more routes that go outside of their respective municipal boundaries. For example, some MyWay routes, such as Route 103, go into the city of Brampton. This makes traveling across municipal boundaries and transferring between local transit agencies simpler. But that leads us to the question, how exactly the fares work when you're using more than one system? Well, first of all, most people will end up using GO Transit for regional travel across city boundaries. This is because taking GO for longer distance trips is often the fastest, albeit more expensive option. If you do decide to take only local buses, perhaps to save a bit of money, you will usually have to pay the single ride fare of the first transit agency you ride. Where the bus of a particular agency is located when you board usually does not affect the fare that you pay. For example, if you first board a MyWay bus in Oakville, even though you're in Oakville, you still pay a MyWay fare. As I already mentioned, in general, you only pay a flat fare when boarding local buses. You then have a transfer valid for 2 hours associated with that transit agency loaded on your PRESTO card, granting you free boardings on subsequent buses of that agency. Or, in the case of Milton Transit, since they don't use PRESTO, a paper transfer. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In many cases, local transit agencies will actually accept transfers issued by other local transit agencies. Each transit agency has its own transfer acceptance policy, so finding information on all possible combinations was not always possible. Acceptance of other agencies' transfers is not to be confused with the one fare program that is about to be rolled out for trips involving the TTC, though this might change closer to March 2024. The difference is that with transfer acceptance, the subsequent transit agencies actually don't collect any fare at all, neither from you nor the provincial government. On the other hand, the one fare program, while still being free to you, would result in a fare charged but paid for by the provincial government. The reason for this is because the TTC, not wanting to lose any more revenue from accepting others' transfers, was the only holdout against accepting them, so the provincial government stepped in and agreed to subsidize their fares rather than the transfers truly being free. But the result is the same: no double fares for riders. Transfers are not reissued or extended by subsequent local transit agencies, but they can be used an unlimited number of times, so how many buses you take within the 2-hour window doesn't necessarily matter. What does really matter is which transit agency issued the 2-hour transfer, whether the subsequent transit agency or agencies in question accept that transfer, and whether there is time remaining on the transfer when you board each subsequent bus. Most of the local transit agencies accept each other's transfers, thankfully. Except for the TTC, as of December 2023, all geographically adjacent local transit agencies accept each other's transfers. For example, transfers issued by MyWay will be accepted by the adjacent Brampton Transit, Milton Transit, and Oakville Transit agencies. Someone starting their journey on, say, a Route 103 MyWay bus and boarding a subsequent Brampton Transit bus within 2 hours would be able to do so for free, because Brampton Transit accepts MyWay issued transfers. The reverse, taking Brampton Transit first, then MyWay, is also true for this particular pair. There are many unintended consequences to these free transfers. Along the Highway 7 bus rapid transit corridor in York Region between Martin Grove Road and Vaughan Metropolitan Centre, there are both Brampton and York Region transit buses serving stops along this corridor. Since transfers between both agencies are free, that is, Brampton to York and York to Brampton, any subsequent Brampton or York Region transit bus taken after traveling on this corridor will not cost you extra either way. However, since the first bus you took determined the fare that you will pay for the entire trip, you'll either end up paying the higher York Region transit fare or the lower Brampton transit fare, depending on the bus that you boarded first. The adult Brampton transit fare is 48 cents cheaper, so getting on a Brampton bus first is the better option. The difference is even more pronounced for the senior fares, where Brampton transit fares are 65 cents less for non-Brampton resident seniors. Unfortunately, most, if not all, map apps don't tell you this kind of information and will instead recommend taking either agency's bus first. This debacle puts York Region Transit in an unfortunate position where even people traveling entirely within York Region on York Region Transit's own BRT corridor would prefer to take and even wait for the Brampton Transit buses. No reasonable transit system should ever charge you different fares just because you got on a different bus along the same route for the exact same journey, like in this situation. Another example, say you're traveling from South Common in southwest Mississauga, which is mostly served by MyWay buses, but also served by one Oakville Transit route, Route 24. In the area near South Common along the College Way, if you had the option of MyWay Route 36 or Oakville Transit Route 24, which operates on a counterclockwise one-way loop through South Common, and then continuing your journey on any MyWay bus as usual, in terms of cost, as Oakville Transit issued transfers are accepted by MyWay, and Oakville Transit non-adult fares are way more generous, in fact free, compared to MyWay non-adult fares. Obviously, you choose to start with the Oakville Transit bus. I could go on giving more of these situations, but the fix for these is pretty simple. Make local transit fares uniform across the GTA, then there would be no need to pick and choose buses. In the next part of this series, I will go over the TTC's fare system in more detail as it works slightly differently from the rest. If you enjoyed this video and want more content like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to this channel. Thanks for watching.